Hello, YouTube. This is Mahadeva, the Thunder Wizard, and this is the divine union of masculine and feminine. Forgive me, I just woke up a little while ago. All right, so I want to talk to you about an interesting aspect of the union of the divine masculine and feminine, and this is the little-known relationship between the god of thunder Indra and his wife Indrani. And this is a really interesting connection. Now, Indra, as you know, is the god of lightning and thunder in the Vedic tradition. And Indra is one of the oldest gods in the Indian pantheon. Like Shiva. Shiva is actually a newer incarnation of the divine. And actually, the name Shiva means auspicious, and it was one of the names of Indra way back when, we're talking whatever it was, 3, 4,000, 5,000 years ago. Indra was the main god that the Vedics worshipped. They worshipped Indra, and I mean, almost all of the Vedas are written to Indra. So Shiva was one of his epithets. And so Shiva is now treated like a demigod, with the Trimurti, specifically of the two, Rama and Shiva, have taken supremacy. But Indra was and has been and still is to this day a representation of virility, of male sexual power and virility. And he is seen as just very lusty in all things, not just sexually, but in general. In fact, he voraciously consumes the soma drink, which is symbolic of the nectar of immortality, and it represents life force. And so he is also said to be blessed with immortality. And so being that he's this intense, very powerful, very lusty god of the senses, he needs a lot of power, obviously. I mean, he is basically, like, if you were to pick a god of power, it would be Indra. And his wife is Indrani. And now, Indra nowadays is associated with the planet Jupiter, which makes sense because the planet Jupiter has by far the largest magnetic field in the solar system, second only to the sun. And the sun itself is even strongly associated with Indra because it says in the Vedas that the sun sits in the east and worships Indra for power and long life. That would be because Indra himself is the god of electromagnetism. So anytime, not just electricity, but electromagnetism. And so the sun, what keeps the sun going and keeps it from burning out is its intense magnetic field. And it is the electromagnetism at the center of the sun that keeps it from consuming hydrogen so fast that it burns itself out. It slows that down so the sun can continue to create light and heat through what do you call it? Through nuclear fusion, smashing the atoms and the electrons and everything of the hydrogen. That's what creates it. It's the fusion creates this nuclear explosion. So Indra is seen as being part of that, and so much so that the sun worships Indra. So Indra, even though he is seen generally as the planet Jupiter, because Jupiter of the uh, external planets is known for its intense magnetic field. In fact, it's the magnetic field of Jupiter as it goes through the sky that sweeps away all of the major, um, the major projectiles, the comets and all the stuff that would, destroy the Earth. It's the electromagnetic field of Jupiter sweeping through the sky that casts them all out. So Jupiter is tremendously protective of us. But it's very powerful. In fact, the lightning on Jupiter, I don't know exactly, I don't remember. In one of my videos, or at least a couple of my videos, I talk about how much more powerful the lightning on Jupiter is. It's like 100 times greater. And there's like something like, bolts of lightning that go from one of Jupiter's moons all the way to Jupiter or something like that. These crazy amounts of lightning and crazy amounts of electromagnetism. And this is Indra. Indra is the force behind all of that. So what kind of goddess would it take to empower that intense power? So you have Indrani. Indrani is his wife. She's also called Indra, and she's also called Shachi. And Shachi is just another pronunciation of Shakti, and it means intense power. So she is his wife. She has been seen originally as the goddess of rage, and the reason for that, according to some of the mythology, is that Indra, being Indra, he's this god of electromagnetism. He's also the god of insemination. Like, it's his lightning that strikes to the earth that causes the plants to grow, and so he represents insemination of the whole living universe. So in mythological terms, it means that he is constantly seeking out sexual conquests, and he can't control himself, which again, this is mythology, and it's not trying to explain, it is poetically explaining this power of electromagnetism. In fact, electromagnetism is, some people could argue that electromagnetism is the most important aspect of physics to our survival. Without it, nothing would survive. It is the electromagnetic attraction that keeps electrons spinning around different molecules. It is the electromagnetic force that is preventing me from falling through my chair down through to the center of the earth, because gravity is so strong. And even though electromagnetism is this tiny little force, it's so tiny you can't see it. But it's preventing my hands from going through each other. My hands feel like they're touching each other, but in reality they're not. There is a very, 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 very tiny barrier of electromagnetism that no matter how hard I push this, the molecules of my hands don't pass through each other. And so, it bonds everything. It keeps all the bonds of electrons and all that other stuff on the macro level, and on the micro level, and on the macro level, the big level, it keeps things orbiting around each other, and it's just, actually, I'm talking about gravity there for a second. Sorry. Point is that if it weren't for the electromagnetic force, gravity would just consume everything. But the electromagnetic force keeps it away. And so I don't even know, it's like 10 to the 30th power times stronger than gravity. This is how powerful Indra is. And he's in everything. He is literally in everything. this force of electromagnetism. This is why the ancient Vedics worshipped Indra above all other gods, that he was the one. So his wife has to be incredibly powerful. Now, here we start to learn about what true power is. Because as I was saying, he's a very lusty god, and he goes after whatever his eyes see. If he wants something, he goes after it, and if he wants a woman, he goes after her. And so he's not, he's not in a what do you call those? Yes, I'm tired. I just woke up. In other words, he has a lot of sexual encounters with as many females as he can get his electric hands on. So his wife became very jealous. She was very jealous. She was consumed with jealousy over that. So she, in order to be his wife, she had to do very intense meditative practices in order to master her jealousy. In fact, to this day in India, when a woman is jealous of her husband, she's given Indrani rituals and mantras. And so she prays and worships Indrani, and the result is that this will get rid of her jealousy. So this is a very powerful goddess, and she is also strongly associated with motherly love. So one of the depictions of her is to see her cradling Kartikeya, which is a Mars deity, one of the sons. There's a whole myth about him and his birth, and the 7 mothers or the 9 mothers that give birth to him, the goddesses. So she's transformed from this goddess of rage and jealousy to this goddess of love and unconditional love. So that's what she represents. She represents the ability to love unconditionally. I mean, I really appreciate this goddess for so many reasons. But she is associated with Venus. So what is Venus? Venus is represents love, represents connection. She represents sexual experience and sensuality, of course, and fertility. But she also represents love, like where there's strife and chaos, Venus comes in and says, hey, let's make love, not war. So Venus, left to herself, is also quite lusty, and she enjoys multiple connections and partners. And so it represents, again, loving everything and everybody equally and not making distinctions, and prosperity and happiness. So it's an interesting love affair that these two have. And I don't know, I wish there was more that I could say about it. I mean, on a personal note, I've had a lot of experience with what this goddess represents, and I'm not really comfortable sharing all that, but it is such a relief when jealousy disappears. Such a relief. It's such a relief when you can love your partner exactly as they are and know that your partner loves you exactly as you are. Listen, I've been around here on this planet for a while, and I've had no shortage of romantic relationships, and I have to say the majority of them, you always have to be careful, because if you let your partner know everything you're thinking, maybe I'm just talking from my limited experience with women. I think a lot has changed, but my experience, most of my life has been that you got to be careful what you say, and you got to be careful how much of your thoughts you let your partner know, because if they knew everything you were thinking, they would be so angry and so jealous, and that's been my experience with women. I got to be really careful I don't. And when you experience somebody that can hear everything you have to say and know everything that's in your mind and only love and appreciate no matter what it is that you're thinking and feeling and have no jealousy, it is the most complete feeling of love I've ever experienced. So Indrani for me represents pure romantic love. Like when you love your partner not because of what they can do for you, but you love them just because of who they are. And whatever it is that they like, whatever it is that they want, because you just love them unconditionally, that gives you pleasure. If it gives them pleasure, it gives you pleasure. That is Indrani. That's the essence of Indrani, and it's like the standard of perfection for true unconditional romantic love that almost nobody. I mean, I've met one person that actually lived that, and it was the most amazing love of my life. And I don't think anybody will ever come close to that. I think that's such an inhuman level. I don't know that anybody else could do that. But I guess if it happens with one person, it can happen with another. So if I were to choose a goddess for somebody, if a heterosexual woman came to me and said, who should I worship, to help me be the best wife possible, I'd say Indrani, because she just loves unconditionally. She's just full of maternal love, and the thing about it is that her love is empowering, because Indra is so powerful. He's still just, I mean, as I said before, I mean, he's more powerful than the sun. He's more powerful than the force of gravity. He's more powerful than death. He's immortal. And like among the gods, he is immortal, and he consumes the soma of immortality. Like he just lustfully consumes all of it. That's what happens every time that the moon becomes a new moon. When the moon wanes, what it is that Indra has flown up into the sky, and he has grabbed the moon and he's wrestling it down under the earth. And so it takes him a couple of weeks, and he wrestles it down and he gets it under the earth. And when it's under the earth, it's the new moon, and then he presses it out, and it's very hard to hold on to, and he presses it out and he squeezes out all of the nectar of immortality until the moon is flat, and then the moon slips out of his hand and pops up in the sky and rises and starts to get full again. And that soma is now under the earth, and it comes up through the plants. And so when you walk out in the morning and you see the mist over the grass, or the drops of water that are coming out through the grass, that's obviously coming up through the ground, that's the soma. That's the soma that Indra has pressed down. It's the nectar of immortality. In fact, the word dew comes from Thu, which is his name, In Thu Ra, the dew, the droplet, the soma of immortality, the moon. This is Indra. He's the lord of the full moon. And so everything associated with the moon is associated with Indrani as well, because one could say she is in fact the nectar of immortality, because he lusts after that more than anything, and he grabs it and tries to bring it down, and of course you can't hold on to that. So one could say that she is associated with that. She's one of the, she's well known, but I think she's one of the most underappreciated goddesses in the Vedic pantheon. So Indrani to me represents this sweet, potent nectar, that if you allow that energy into you, it will empower you to such a level where you can conquer the universe. Because Indra is a conquering god. He's now again he's seen as a demigod, but in his original Vedic form, he was the king of the universe, and he conquered. He was a conqueror. That's all he did. He was just full of this power to conquer, which means that he's so empowered and so full of confidence and so full of energy. And this comes from his Shakti. The name Shakti, she represents pure Shakti, pure feminine power. And again, we need to understand that from the dance of the yin and yang, from the masculine and the feminine, the dance between the masculine and the feminine is that, sorry, I'm distracted here. All this talk's got me distracted. Between the dance of the masculine and the feminine, what was I going to say? The feminine empowers. And this is so important to understand, that the masculine can do nothing. Nothing without the feminine. Absolutely nothing. And just the gaze, when Shakti just gazes on the masculine, if she just gazes on him and thinks a positive thought, he will be full of power. I've talked about it before, but you can prove this yourself. Get a group of people together and find the most, the least confident guy. The stereotype would be, find the 95-pound geek with the glasses on, the nerdy guy. Bring him on up to the front of the group. Find the most beautiful, sensual woman that every guy is looking at. Bring her up. Have her sit on the ground next to him, next to his left ankle, and let her just simply grab his ankle, and then have her think that he's the most amazing man in the world. And he doesn't have to know it. Don't tell him. Whisper to her, think that he's the most amazing man in the world. And then muscle test him. Have him put his arm out and say, okay, hold your arm out. You will not be able to put his arm down. His arm will not go down. And that's because she is empowering him. And then all you have to do is switch it around. Get the most masculine, the biggest, strongest, confident guy. Bring him up there. And then bring, again, maybe the opposite, the least feminine woman, in there. Bring her up and do the same thing, except tell her, now think he's just the weakest, most pathetic loser in the world. And have her hold his left ankle and muscle test him. His arm will drop every time. He won't be able to hold his arm up. Because all it takes is the thought of the feminine. All she has to do is just think. The worst experience that a guy can have is, when a woman does this, looks him up and down and smacks her lips with disapproval. That'll drop a guy to his knees. I mean, we live for that, and I can tell you, with the woman that I loved the most in my life, who sadly she's no longer with us, but when we would meet each other, and we hadn't seen each other for a while, and I tell you, man, when the door would open and her eyes would hit me, I could see in her eyes the love that she had for me. And that look was everything. Literally to this day, everything to me. And I would do whatever the hell it took to see that look in her eyes. And I wish I could reflect it, but the look was of such love and such acceptance. And, she would say, it's you. She'd do that every time she saw me. And it would just slay me. And it was the most pleasurable experience of my whole life to this day. If I can pick one moment that's the most pleasurable, is to see that look in her eyes. And I would literally do absolutely anything. I mean it. I would have done anything just to see that look for 1 second. As it turned out, that look came from her loving and experiencing me being happy. And this is Indrani. She takes pleasure in the power of her masculine, of her man. So, again, we're talking about perfection. And I can tell you, ladies, if you want to change your man, the last thing you want to do is start telling him what to do. What you need to do is you need to do this, and you know what your problem is, and if you did that, and why can't I depend on you? And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be chastised. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I can tell you that will just chop him to pieces. But if you can find in him that which brings you the joy and love, and if you can find things about him that you admire and that you love and you respect, and when you look at him, you look him in the eyes, think those things, unconditionally send him those things, he will not ever want to leave you, and he will change in order to be what you admire. It's what we live for. It's what us guys live for. So that's my video for the week, the union of the masculine and the feminine. And in the B portion of this video, which you can go, if you go to thunderwizard.com, you can subscribe to the union of masculine and feminine. I'm going to talk about how to take these two forces of masculine and feminine within yourself and to unify this within yourself so that you can create anything in the world that you want. Okay? So for that, you go to thunderwizard.com and you subscribe to the divine union of masculine and feminine, and we will talk about that over there. Okay, see you over there.